2 months before our anniversary, my husband cheated on me with my best friend, then had the nerve to blame me for his affair, so I left him and moved away. A year later, he showed up expecting me to fix our broken marriage. It's funny how you think you know someone. You think you've seen all the sides of them, the good, the bad, the moments of joy, and the silent pain. I had always thought I knew my husband, Daniel. I thought I understood him, his needs, his desires, his flaws. We had been married for 5 years, and our relationship had always felt like a secure little world of its own. But that world shattered into pieces the day I found out about the affair. It started like any other day, the kind of day you never expect will change your life. I had spent the morning planning our anniversary celebration, 2 months away from the big day, and I was excited to mark our 6th year together. Daniel and I had always been good at celebrating milestones. I had even bought the tickets for a weekend getaway to a vineyard in Napa, something I knew he would love. I couldn't wait to see the look on his face when I surprised him with it. But all of that came crashing down with a single text message. It was from Sarah, my best friend. "Mia, we need to talk. I've been holding something in, and I can't do it anymore. Please call me." I didn't think much of it at first. Sarah and I had been close for years. She was the one I turned to when things were hard, the one I laughed with over late-night glasses of wine. But when I saw the urgency in her message, my stomach twisted. Something wasn't right. I dialed her number immediately. She picked up on the second ring, but her voice wasn't the comforting tone I was used to. "Mia," she said, her voice shaking, I don't know how to say this. I've been seeing Daniel. We've been together for the last few months." The words hit me like a slap in the face. I dropped the phone in disbelief, my heart pounding in my chest. The world seemed to tilt, everything spinning around me. My best friend. My husband. They'd been lying to me. 4 months. What? I managed to whisper, my voice barely audible. "Sarah, are you serious? You're telling me that you've been sleeping with my husband?" She didn't answer right away, but I could hear her breathing heavily on the other end of the line. "I never wanted this to happen, Mia," she said, her voice breaking. It just did. We got close after you and Daniel started growing distant. He said he wasn't happy, and I was there for him." The pain hit me like a wave, crashing over me with an intensity I had never felt before. I wanted to scream, to cry, to demand answers, but instead, I just stood there, unable to move, unable to breathe. "Why didn't you tell me?" I whispered, the betrayal cutting deeper than I could have ever imagined. "Why didn't you tell me before?" "I couldn't," she said, her voice so small now. "I was scared of losing you. I thought you'd never forgive me." "Forgive you?" I repeated, my voice rising with the hurt and anger. "You betrayed me, Sarah. You betrayed me with my own husband. How could you think I'd forgive you for that?" "I'm so sorry, Mia," she sobbed. "I never meant to hurt you." But it was too late for apologies. I felt like my entire world had been ripped from underneath me. My best friend, the person I trusted with everything, had crossed a line I couldn't ever forgive. But the betrayal wasn't just hers. It was Daniel's too. I ended the call and walked to the living room, where Daniel was sitting, unaware of the storm that was about to hit him. I felt numb, like I was watching myself from a distance. I had to confront him. I had to know the truth. I walked into the room and stood in front of him, my heart pounding in my chest. His eyes met mine, and for a brief moment, I saw a flicker of guilt in them. But it was gone as quickly as it appeared. "What's going on, Mia?" he asked, trying to sound calm, but I could hear the unease in his voice. I didn't say anything at first. I couldn't. The words felt too heavy, too much to bear. Instead, I pulled out my phone and showed him the text from Sarah. The moment his eyes scanned it, his face went pale. You told her?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. There was a trace of panic in his eyes, but he quickly masked it with a defensive look. "I didn't tell her, Daniel," I said, my voice shaking with a mix of anger and hurt. She told me everything." He stood up quickly, running a hand through his hair. "Mia, I never wanted you to find out like this," he said, his tone desperate now. "I didn't mean for it to happen. It just did. We were growing apart, and Sarah, she was there. She listened to me when you didn't. Don't you dare blame me for this," I spat, my voice rising. "You're the one who cheated on me. You're the one who betrayed me with my best friend. And now you're telling me it's my fault? You're blaming me for your affair?" "I didn't say it was your fault," he said quickly, but I could see the defensive walls going up. "But you've been distant, Mia. You've been so focused on work and everything else, and I felt neglected. Sarah was there for me. She understood me." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My chest tightened, and tears welled in my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. I wasn't going to let him see me cry. Not after everything he had done. "You don't get to blame me, Daniel," I said, my voice cold and firm. "You don't get to blame me for your lies, your infidelity. This is on you. All of it." I didn't know how much longer I could stand there, listening to him try to justify his actions. But I knew one thing for sure, I couldn't stay in this marriage. Not anymore. "I'm done," I said, the words falling from my lips like a weight I had been carrying for far too long. "I'm leaving. I need space. I need time away from you." Daniel's face twisted in shock, and he reached out to grab my arm. "Mia, please don't leave me. We can fix this. We can work through it. I love you. I never meant for it to happen like this." But I pulled away from him, my heart shattering as I did. "No, Daniel. You had your chance. You broke me. And now I'm done." I walked out of the house that day, leaving everything behind. The life we had built, the dreams we had shared, it was all gone. I couldn't look at him anymore. I couldn't look at Sarah. I needed to get away, to start fresh, to find myself again. I moved into a small apartment in the city, far from the life I had known. I focused on work, on healing, on rediscovering who I was without the weight of betrayal hanging over me. I cut ties with Sarah. I couldn't bring myself to speak to her after what she had done. And Daniel? He became a ghost to me. But a year later, as I sat in my new apartment, my phone rang. It was him. "Mia," Daniel's voice came through the phone, softer than I had ever heard it. "Please, can we talk?" I paused for a moment, my heart pounding. I hadn't heard from him in months, and yet, here he was, asking for another chance. "I don't know what you want from me, Daniel," I said, my voice steady but guarded. "What could you possibly have to say to me?" "I know I've hurt you," he said, his voice filled with regret. "But I've changed. I've learned from my mistakes. I'm sorry. I want to fix this. I want us to be together again." I felt a wave of anger rise up in me. After everything, after all the pain he had caused, he thought he could just waltz back into my life and expect me to fix our marriage? I wasn't the one who had broken it. "No, Daniel," I said, my voice unwavering. "You don't get to come back and expect me to fix what you broke. I'm done. I've moved on. And I'm never going back." He was silent for a long moment, and then I heard him sigh. "I understand," he said, his voice hollow. "But I'll always love you, Mia. I'll always regret what I did." I ended the call, feeling the finality of it all. I had made my decision. I wasn't going to let him destroy me again. I had found my peace. And that was something no one, not even Daniel, could take away from me. After that phone call, I thought I could finally put Daniel behind me. It had been a year since I walked out on him, and the life I was building without him felt like the only thing that mattered. I focused on my work, rediscovered old hobbies, and surrounded myself with friends who truly cared for me. The scars from the affair were still there, but they weren't as sharp. Time, it seemed, had begun to heal me, piece by piece. I had met new people, started to feel the joy of independence again. I wasn't the woman who had been devastated by betrayal anymore. I was stronger, more confident, and more certain than ever that I was done with Daniel. The idea of letting him back into my life, after everything he had done, seemed impossible. But fate had a way of throwing curveballs, and sometimes, those curveballs came with a familiar voice. It was late one evening when I received another call from Daniel. This time, there was no hesitation in my actions. I didn't even let the phone ring more than once before I silenced it. But he didn't stop. The calls kept coming, each one more desperate than the last. I knew it was him, he wasn't going to let this go. The message he left on my voicemail was nothing like the first one. There was no defensiveness, no attempts to justify his actions. Just raw, vulnerable regret. Mia, please, I know I don't deserve a second chance. I know I've hurt you beyond words, but I'm asking you to just listen to me. I've made so many mistakes, and I know I don't have the right to ask for your forgiveness. But I'm here. I'm willing to do whatever it takes to prove to you that I've changed. Please, I'll wait for you to call me. Just, please talk to me. His voice, broken and full of pain, shook me. I didn't want to feel sorry for him. I didn't want to care. But hearing him like that, sounding so unlike the man who had betrayed me, shook me to my core. He had always been a man who knew what to say to get his way, but this time, it felt different. I deleted the voicemail, just as I had with the others, and took a deep breath. It was over. It had to be. But the days passed, and something began to gnaw at me. What if he really had changed? What if he wasn't just asking for forgiveness because he was lonely, but because he truly understood the damage he'd caused? The idea lingered in the back of my mind, but I pushed it away every time it crept forward. Still, I found myself thinking about the good times, the days before everything fell apart. I remembered how much I had loved him, how much I had trusted him. But that love had been tainted. The woman I was a year ago would have done anything to make our marriage work, to forgive him and move on. But that woman no longer existed. She was gone, replaced by someone who was no longer willing to let someone else's betrayal define her future. Then, one evening, as I walked out of my office building, I saw him. Daniel. He was standing across the street, leaning against a car, looking more broken than I had ever seen him. His eyes were tired, sunken, like he hadn't slept in days. He looked older somehow, worn down by regret, by time, by the consequences of his own actions. He looked like a man who had lost everything and didn't know how to find it again. I stopped in my tracks, my heart pounding in my chest. The sight of him stirred something inside me, a mix of anger, confusion, and pain. But more than that, I felt the weight of a decision I had been avoiding for too long. He saw me before I could turn away, his face lighting up with a desperate hope. He took a few steps toward me, but I stood my ground, refusing to move. Mia, he said, his voice hoarse. I didn't know where else to go. I couldn't let you go on thinking I didn't care. Please. I know I've lost you. But I need you to understand how much I've changed. How much I've learned. I'll do anything to make this right. I looked at him, really looked at him, for the first time in over a year. The man standing before me wasn't the one who had blamed me for his affair, the one who had betrayed my trust. This man was vulnerable, broken, and more than anything, he seemed to be begging for something that I didn't know if I could give him any more: trust. Daniel, you don't get to just show up and expect everything to go back to how it was, I said, my voice firm but trembling. You hurt me. You hurt me in a way that I can never forget. You didn't just betray me, you destroyed the person I was. And now, after everything, you think you can just waltz back into my life and ask for forgiveness? His eyes filled with regret, but there was a glimmer of something else too, a recognition of his mistakes. I never meant to destroy you, Mia. I was selfish. I was weak. I let my insecurities get the best of me. And I hurt you. I know that now. But I love you. I always have. I'm sorry for everything. I could feel the tears welling up in my eyes, but I held them back. I wouldn't cry in front of him, not again. You can't just erase what you did. You can't just make it go away with words. And I'm not going to sit here and let you try to make me feel sorry for you, Daniel. I've spent too long picking up the pieces of my life. I've built something without you. I've learned how to be strong on my own. He took a step closer, his voice softening. I know I don't deserve you, Mia. But I need you to know that I'm not the same man I was. I've done the work. I've been seeing a therapist. I've been working on myself every single day. I'm not asking for you to take me back right now. I just want you to know that I'm not the man I was. And I will spend the rest of my life proving that to you if you'll give me a chance. His words were so different from the man I had known. And for a brief moment, I felt the tiniest crack in my armor. But then I remembered the betrayal. The lies. The way he had blamed me for his actions. I couldn't just let that go. Not yet. I don't know if I can ever trust you again, Daniel, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. And I don't know if I want to. But I need you to understand something. I've moved on. I've found a life without you. And that life doesn't have space for someone who doesn't respect me. His face fell, but he nodded, accepting the truth in my words. I understand. And I'll respect that. But just know, I'm not giving up. I'll wait. I'll wait as long as it takes for you to see that I've changed. I didn't say anything else. I turned away and walked into the building, leaving him standing there. As I entered the elevator, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. I wasn't ready to forgive him, and I wasn't ready to rebuild what had been broken. But I had made the right decision. For the first time in a long time, I was doing what was best for me.